Greetings, I'm John Phillips, and welcome to Next Generation Today. I'm joined on set by the host of the Tammy Bruce Show, which you can get online at tammybruce.com, Tammy Bruce, and PJTV's own barbecuing master himself, Stephen Kruiser. Alan West will be joining us in just a couple of minutes from Washington, D.C. to give us an update on what's going on in the nation's capital. And just ahead, Alan revved it up this weekend, over the Memorial Day weekend, but also had time to catch up with actor Gary Sinise about a cause near and dear to his heart. What is it? We'll find out. Plus, Bob Schieffer isn't pleased with the way Obama deals with the media, and he's given some advice to the commander-in-chief. And the man believed to have stabbed a French soldier is in custody, but do we have any clue what could have motivated the attack outside of the fact the guy's cuckoo? All that and much, much more. But first, we'll begin with Stephen, who has a report on the NRA.
Imagine my surprise when I began the week reading an article in the New Republic about the death of the NRA and the return of the gun control debate, and it's not over yet. It made me think three things, first of all. One, they really aren't going to go away with the gun control stuff. This is, you know, we like to think we had a minor victory last month, but they're not going to give it up because they've stated it's part of his agenda. Secondly, I think the scandals are sticking. That's why they led the week talking about gun control. And third, I think this is their way of telling us. I'm going to ask you first. Are we done with comprehensive gun control? Are they going to try comprehensive gun control one more? Or are they going to piecemeal this at us now with little bills?
Well, depending on who's impeached and maybe in jail, that could affect how many people could help move gun control along in Washington, D.C. Because there is actually in prison, there are no guns except for the guards, so that's kind of good. Look, there was a new poll that said 62% of Americans were ready for them to move on. Now, I think that's a phrase that the liberals understand. Americans are done with this. They realize that it was pretty much a hoax. They know that they've been manipulated. They see the real things happening in the country, and I think they're done. Whether the liberals and Obama see it and recognize it and react, I don't know.
I was asked this yesterday on a radio show about this. Bloomberg is positioning himself to fund the counter NRA, if you will. And it's yet another thing he's pouring a lot of money in. He's already thrown a lot of money in. Is his end game a 2016 run, or is he looking for something different? Because he's not playing nice with the Democrats that well yet.
Well, look, he was termed out as mayor and then ran a write-in campaign for a third term because he didn't want to leave the stage. This is a guy who likes being in the spotlight, and he's going to be forced from office, maybe even replaced by Anthony Weiner. And there's really no place for him to go outside of running for president if he wants to stay in politics. Now, what I think is interesting about this is they claim the NRA is dead. Well, the NRA just beat Barack Obama in the U.S. Senate when he was trying to put his gun control initiative through.
Great point. Yep.
Not only did they beat him, but they got 4 Democrats to vote against the gun control measure. If they're dead and they're politically irrelevant, then how do they beat the president in the Senate, and how do they beat him among 4 members of his own party in the U.S. Senate?
Exactly, with all his second-term clout.
Exactly.
All right, well, now it's time to move on to the media, because this Sunday, CBS's Bob Schieffer has some advice for the president in the wake of the IRS scandal, the Benghazi scandal, the AP scandal, the media intimidation scandal. I'm kind of losing track of all these things. Have there been any that have broken since we started the show? Who knows? Anyway, go ahead and listen to this advice from Bob Schieffer to the president.
So I am glad the president has asked the Attorney General to review whether his investigations into leaks is having a chilling effect on journalists. But it shouldn't stop there. The president needs to rethink his entire communications policy, top to bottom. It is hurting his credibility and shortchanging the public. And to head the review, how about someone other than the Attorney General, whose department is so deeply involved? That makes no sense to me.
Now, Bob Schieffer's a liberal, but I've long believed that where you stand depends on where you sit. And Bob Schieffer sits in front of the camera at CBS News. And even though he's a liberal and probably voted for Barack Obama and probably supports all his policies, his profession is now under attack, and he's defending the tribe. He's defending other journalists. And he is really, I mean, he and Jon Stewart have been the ones that have just been absolutely going for the jugular on Obama and the administration since these scandals broke.
Well, it might be a tipping point that's been reached. And, you know, when Ramses IV gets it, that there's a problem, you know that you're in trouble. I think that there's been, yes, without the media, maybe they wouldn't be so concerned, but they're seeing a kind of hubris that is troubling now everyone. And there's a recognition also, look, they don't necessarily have to protect him so much because he's not running for office again. So they've got what they want. Maybe they're more worried about Hillary, and maybe it's in their interest to make Obama look bad, as long as maybe that would protect Hillary, their next favorite. So liberals clearly don't have a moral foundation, because if they did, they would have been saying this a very long time ago. So something's in it for them. Plus, it's now embarrassing to have to defend him because of the volume of the scandals.
This is what I was waiting for. I wanted to see if it was still sticking this week with the media, because in the past, the thing is, if they've shown any displeasure with this administration at all, it's lasted 2-3 days maybe, and then they've made excuses for themselves for having even dared to speak against him. But now we're more than a week into this, and they're still talking about, mostly because of what Tammy said, because their profession is under attack. Now, they're still remarkably clueless about how complicit they were in getting him reelected, in putting him in this position of power. That's the thing. Schieffer's completely, you know, if you watched him moderate a debate, if you watched him do anything in the last 4 or 5 years, he helped this president become that arrogant. And he's completely unaware of that.
Well, you know what they say, when you've lost Bob Schieffer, you've lost North Korea. And he just needs to keep that in mind at all times.
Boy, that is a very good reminder.
You know who else they lost? They lost Maureen Dowd.
Yes.
Maureen Dowd has been unbelievably critical. And David Axelrod has then gone on TV and attacked her for doing that. And Robert Gibbs.
And when you've lost Maureen Dowd, you've lost that little section just above North Korea that buffers China from North Korea. So it's just the creepiness of all of that. It just keeps on going. Yeah.
Right. She's Uzbekistan.
Yeah. Isn't that Uzbekistan what I just described?
Maureen Dowd is
there
Uzbekistan.
You go. All right.
What do you have for us?
Well, apparently, the French were looking for an Amish guy, a rabbi, or maybe ZZ Top as they began their search for the culprit who stabbed a French soldier last week, pretty much on the heels of that horrible London murder of one of their troops. Paris police had been looking for a, quote, bearded man seen praying before the soldier was attacked. Now, immediately you think, of course, a rabbi, or immediately you think, of course, of maybe an Amish guy, and maybe there was a cart nearby. I don't know, there's horses in France, or maybe ZZ Top. I'm sure maybe they pray on occasion. I don't know to whom. Well, now we've learned that they've got a suspect in custody. By the way, that soldier is okay, so he's going to be recovering, thank God. Well, they've got a suspect in custody, but the French foreign minister is quoted as saying he, quote, cannot talk about Islam in relation to this case. However, the guy was shouting Allah Akbar. He has apparently confessed, and he appears to be not any other religion except Muslim. Did I say that by not saying he was a Muslim? He appears to be something that's not any other religion and did it for God. But we're not allowed to talk about that.
Well, the position of our government is that the Fort Hood shooter, Malik Hassan, was workplace violence.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with Islam either. That had nothing to do with him having sympathies.
Well,
this
seems to be the international now approach is to deny the obvious. This is like the cat putting its head under the curtain, thinking it's completely, can't be seen and invisible because they can't see you. Maybe this is the new tactic. If we pretend that we can't hear or see the Islamist terrorists, maybe that we'll become invisible. I'm not quite sure what the plan is
I've dubbed it Anything But Islam, and I'm writing a parody musical about it actually now. It's seriously am. But you're right. They're wishing it away. They're hoping. Don't even. The fact that you mentioned ZZ Top means that there are several international officials right now trying to find out if Billy Gibbons has ever murdered anybody in the name of God. They'll seriously go down that road. This denial of the obvious will go on until we are completely defeated. I'm usually not one to go to the extreme like that, but they won't recognize the problem until the problem is too big to handle.
Well, and let's also be honest. The extremists in the religion cannot handle any criticism at all. If you do a cartoon they don't like, they start killing people. If you do a movie they don't like, they start killing people. And it's what's going on is you have these governments that are trying not to antagonize them. But they hate us anyway.
Well, you know what they do every time. In the process of this, they then smear every other Muslim in the world and in their country. Because by not differentiating And the presumption is then that it's every Muslim that you have to watch out for. The way to stop this madness and to then make sure that the Muslims who are not Muslim supremacists are understood for being decent people, the only way you can do that is by separating out the extremists. But when you aren't willing to address it at all, it smears the entire community.
They're also abetting the entire cause right now, because you see in Great Britain, in Canada, and soon here, in an effort to avoid antagonizing anyone, they're undermining freedoms, basic freedoms like free speech. And so that is actually helping the terrorists with their agenda.
You ever see the movie Encino Man with Brendan Fraser?
Yep.
The point of the movie is it's a guy who is a caveman who was stuck in a block of ice. The ice is thawed out, he's thawed out, and he's back in the San Fernando Valley in like the 1990s. And it's a caveman living in a world with
one of your
people going to
favorite
malls.
movies, I
Love
bet.
the movie.
Yes.
But what's going on right now in France and what's going on right now in Western society reminds me of that movie, where you have literal cavemen living in a first world society, and you've got to be very cautious with how you deal with the cavemen, and the Islamists are just living in the year 2. And you know they are completely out of control.
It's cavemen who've then adopted Islam, and the rest of the Muslims are not cavemen.
Right.
But when you won't admit these things, everyone's going to think, well, maybe they've all been thawed out from a block of ice, and when in fact maybe they haven't been living in the ice, only the cavemen have been.
Oh, right.
We're just saying, I think we've solved all these problems
Absolutely.
ourselves.
And right now we're going to turn to someone who's definitely not a caveman, although he is in Washington, D.C. He's around a bunch of politicians. And I hear he had a very busy Memorial Day weekend. Lots of barbecues, hobnobbing with lobbyists and politicians and the creme de la creme. Isn't that right, Alan West?
Dude, that's not me, okay? So I don't know who you're talking to. But it was a really great Memorial Day weekend. On Saturday, I had the honor of speaking with Gary Sinise, who was preparing to co-host the annual Memorial Day concert being held on the West Capitol lawn the following day. And the great thing about talking with Gary, we discuss all of the great work he does with veterans organizations, and of course with the Lieutenant Dan Band going over with the USO to play concerts for our men and women that are deployed. But right now he's working on a memorial for the disabled American veterans, and it really comes back to that part that he played in Forrest Gump of Lieutenant Dan, who had lost both of his legs. But as he said in the interview that we did, that was about a veteran that overcame his situations. Then on Sunday, I had the fantastic opportunity, as you saw at the top of the show, on my motorcycle to ride in the 26th annual tradition up here called Rolling Thunder, where we really are focusing on the men and women who have given their lives in defense of this great nation, but also those who are not accounted for. One person that everyone is really focusing on is Army Specialist Bo Bergdahl, who was taken away about 2 years ago in Afghanistan, who is still not accounted for. So we have to continue to focus on them. I got to ride at the front of about 300,000 bikes with one of the founders, Ted Shapak. So it's something that you will never forget, leading that pack, looking down Constitution Avenue toward the Capitol.
Well, with all these scandals that are out there in the ether in Washington, D.C., which ones are you following? What stories are you following closely?
Well, there are a couple of things I want to talk about before we get to the scandal. Most importantly, I want to look at Syria and then the cyber attacks by the Chinese government. And I'll start with Syria. It's been in the news kind of a bit, and we saw John McCain over there making headlines, visiting the country and talking to the opposition. But what people don't realize is that Russia has now supplied the Syrian government with state-of-the-art anti-aircraft missile systems and radar systems. Now, of course, the simple question is, how many people on the opposition side, the rebel army, how many aircraft do they have? Well, let's answer that. 0. So who do you think the Russians are really sending those systems to defend against? 2 countries, Israel and America. So again, we see the window of opportunity to be able to do something like a no-fly zone is very much so closed up. Syria is not going to be like Libya, where you can have complete impunity to fly up in the airspace. And I believe that if we see this arms race building, because England and France have said that they will supply arms, if John McCain wants to start pushing for us to do the same thing, Remember the last time we had something like this was kind of similar to Afghanistan, and then we didn't see some good second and third order effects from that.
Alan,
but now switching to China, yes, go ahead.
I saw a headline today that indicated that Israel would be willing to bomb any ship or attack anyone delivering missile systems, including Russia, to Syria. Is that something you've heard?
Yes.
And if that were to occur, what do you think then would happen? What would the fallout be if Israel, in fact, let's say, attacked a Russian ship that was delivering anti-aircraft missiles to the Syrian government?
Well, first of all, that is a true statement that you just made, Tammy. That was the Israeli Defense Minister, Yalon, who said that. And you have to understand, their biggest concern is that those missile systems get into the hands of Hezbollah, which is, just right to the north of them there. And we already saw Israel go in and bomb a munitions convoy in Syria. What I think would happen, you're almost in World War IV. And then I see the Cold War as World War III. And then the question becomes, will President Obama, Chuck Hagel, and the United States of America stand by our ally in that region, Israel? Or will we throw them under the bus? So this is a very interesting point, and it could take this into a larger conflagration.
Wow.
So, yeah. Now I want to switch to China real quick, because we've learned about the breadth and the scope of China's efforts to target our military and high-tech programs. Back in February, we learned these attacks could be traced back to a government building in Shanghai. And now that we have proof this is happening, the question becomes, what do we do about it? Because just recently, we saw even more cyber attacks against the Pentagon going after weapon systems platforms. Next week, out in California, President Obama will sit down with the new Chinese president, Xi Jinping. And the question will be, will we have a strong stance against China as far as these cyber attacks? Now, the last point I want to get to when you talk about scandals, the big talk up here is about the future for Attorney General Eric Holder. I think we talked about this before. I don't think Eric Holder survives this scandal here going on as far as him targeting the AP, Cheryl Atkinson, but most especially James Rosen, and the statement that he made back on the 15th of May before the Judiciary Committee is coming back to haunt him.
All right, who knows? He might be searching Craigslist for a new job. Might be.
Well, they'll set him up.
Adding numbers to the unemployment rolls.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's time for Fast Facts, and let's go ahead and start with you, Alan.
Sure. My fast fact is 54 million. From an article in the National Review, U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius controls a $54 million slush fund to hire thousands of quote-unquote navigators, in-person assisters, and counselors who will propagandize and enroll Obamacare recipients in government-run health insurance exchanges. But the interesting thing from this article, these navigators will have access to highly personal data from potential customers to assess their needs. That means income levels, birth dates, addresses, eligibility for government assistance, Social Security numbers. But this is the real trick. They will not be required to undergo background checks. Criminal records are not automatically disqualifying, and that includes identity theft. And these navigators don't have to know math or insurance, and that is really troubling. Basically, what people are seeing this is a return of ACORN and these community groups that are going to get out there and push the Affordable Care Act and push these exchanges. So I think we got a lot to be concerned about. And we also know about another scandal. Kathleen Sebelius going out and trying to get donations from private organizations to help fund the Affordable Care Act. So wait for that one to come around.
Just amazing stuff. Well, thanks for helping to try to keep these guys honest, Alan. You have your work cut out for you.
Well, that's the goal, and that's why we're here in Washington, D.C.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it. Kruiser, you're up.
1 is my fast fact. That's the number of crappy bureaucratic jobs created by the IRS scandal. They decided, after all of this, to create an Office of Risk Management within the Internal Revenue Service to watch all of that money, all of that Obamacare expansion money in the last couple of years, and they couldn't put one person in place to make sure things weren't awful there. And, of course, this is classic bureaucrat. The only answer to any question is more bureaucracy.
Do they know math?
No, they don't know math.
Nobody knows math.
Nobody needs to know math. But that's
No math.
That's always, to any big government person, the only answer to any question, any problem, is to create more. And this, amidst all of the talk, all of the wailing about the reason that things got out of hand, is because government is too big. So let's make it bigger.
Let's make it bigger by one, right?
It's like Amway with battleships. With these people operate. My fast fact is 8, but I'm going to go ahead and let Michelle Bachmann explain why. Take a look.
My good friends, after a great deal of thought and deliberation, I have decided next year I will not seek a 5th congressional term to represent the wonderful people of the 6th District of Minnesota. After serious consideration, I am confident that this is the right decision. For some, a single 2-year House term is enough service. For others, 10 terms or 2 decades in the House is still not enough service. Our Constitution allows for the decision of length of service in Congress to be determined by the Congress people themselves or by the voters in the district. However, the law limits anyone from serving as President of the United States for more than 8 years. And in my opinion, well, 8 years is also long enough for an individual to serve as a representative for a specific congressional district.
So you won't have Michelle Bachmann to kick around
Well,
anymore.
note there, though, that was a key word that she said, a specific district. She wasn't saying in Congress in general, was she?
And they've
So
been
what do you imply?
They've been monkeying around with her district,
Her district
too.
changed dramatically.
Yeah.
There is the Senate. I would love to see Al Franken go away.
He has no real challenger
This
from the
woman
GOP yet.
is 57 years old, the prime of her political, powerful life. It'll be interesting. Unless there's some health issues we don't know about, I don't think she's going away.
She has some migraine problems. Now, you were saying that somebody put that video next to the video of Deltalina.
Well, look, a Daily Caller has it compared to the Delta safety video. When you get on the airplane and they tell you to hook up, you never get human being. Is that who that is?
Yeah.
You would know.
There's never any smoking on an aircraft.
Never any smoking, and how to put the seatbelt in.
Yeah.
They say it's pretty similar when it comes to the tone and the music and the delivery. And yeah, obviously she's taking the nearest exit.
I don't want
Maybe
her.
there was turbulence ahead.
There's
That's
some
why.
turbulence.
I don't want her to go away simply because, like Sarah Palin, the mere mention of her name makes progressive heads explode. That's why I like having her
And she is a good vote there. This also, though, it's very good for her in that it's now we've got enough time as Tea Party to get somebody else in that seat. Yeah. So that was a good move on her part.
And it's the most Republican district in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, so this is a very smart thing to do. And look, also, the way they produced that video, it's clear this is a woman who is not going to go scan bananas.
Tammy, close us out.
I will indeed. Well, my fast fact is 86. The 86th edition, specifically, of the Scripps National Spelling Bee started Tuesday, and they've added a vocabulary test. That's right. And yet, it's a multiple choice vocabulary test. Now, next year, I'm thinking perhaps they could add phone a friend and ask the audience. Now, that's
and have Regis Philbin host it.
Regis could do it. He'd be great at the spelling bee. Look, I was a great speller. When you're a student, you want to have the vocabulary right. You want to be a good speller. And especially with the texting these days, nobody knows how to spell your anymore. So I'm thinking this is a good idea. I'm a little concerned, though, that they're giving these kids a little bit of an easy way out with the multiple choice aspect.
I was always an awful speller.
Yeah.
Spell check changed my life.
I was a city spelling champ 3 years in a row, and often correct my spell check because it gets things wrong. And I loved the spelling bee just the way it was. Nice strip. I'm a purist. Loved it the way it was. Don't want it changed whatsoever.
He hates the changes to the spelling bee and the designated hitter.
And the designated hitter with a passion.
That's right. That's right. So we've all got our school stories, but good luck to those kids. The kids didn't mind it, by the way, and they all did pretty darn well. So good luck to them in that spelling bee. Yeah.
And that's going to do it for us today. As always, let us know your thoughts and comments on today's show in the comment section below. Or, if you're on the Facebook, go there and like us.
Totally. It's easy
Facebook.com/NextGenTV. On behalf of Tammy, Stephen, and Alan in Washington, D.C., I'm John Phillips. Thanks for watching.